Hi there, my name is Toby and today I want to continue with my Aether Physics series. And today's quite an advanced talk. I want to talk about superconductivity and the Ark of the Covenant. I'm going to explain to you how the Ark of the Covenant would have really worked. It's a different explanation. No one would have said this before, so please bear with me. In order to understand how the Ark of the Covenant would have worked, you need to understand Aether Physics. And I am a scientist. I studied physics. I have a degree in physics, but now, of course, I talk about ether. Very, very different science. Totally different. And you've got to check out my whole series because I explain it from the very beginning. And this is quite advanced. But I hope you should all be able to understand this to some degree at least. So, first of all, what is ether? Ether is a pure fluid field of infinite potential. Infinite potential. It's metaphysical. It's spirit. It's not physical. That's very important to understand. Unmanifest. Infinite, unmanifest energy. So again, it's a concept you've got to wrap your head around. Then we've got this manifest world, manifest energy, limited energy. And limited energy comes from the ether. It is created from the ether. A disturbance of the ether creates energy. And that energy is electromagnetism. It's the only energy. The only manifest energy is electromagnetism. Everything manifest in the universe is electromagnetism. And electromagnetism is simply a disturbance of the ether. This is very important to get this. If you get this, it changes everything. Because the very fundamentals of modern physics, first law of thermodynamics, says that energy cannot be created and destroyed, it can only be transformed. Well, I'm telling you the exact opposite. Energy is not transformed. It's not transformed because there is only one energy. It's not transforming into anything. If you're going to transform energy, you're saying there are different types of energy. They're not different types of energy. There's only one, electromagnetism. There's no transformation happening. And electromagnetism is created and destroyed. Energy is always created and destroyed, not transformed. Totally different. Energy, electromagnetism, is created from the ether. A disturbance in the ether creates it. But once a disturbance happens, it must go back to rest. It will disappear again. It will be destroyed. So energy is always created and destroyed, not transformed. So that's the first thing. Now, once you've got the idea of that, you know that everything is electromagnetism. And again, listen to my whole series. I explain it. I'm going to explain every single physical phenomena in terms of electromagnetism and ether. It can explain everything, including mysterious alien technology. It explains the whole universe. This is a very powerful science. And so today I want to explain superconductivity. And again, if you understand this, you'll understand ancient technology, alien technology, and things like that. And the Ark of the Covenant is, of course, ancient technology, but very, very powerful technology. It was a free energy machine, and I'll come to that. Literally a free energy battery. So I'll come to that. But now you understand everything is electromagnetism, but we've got different types. Have we got different types? No, still the same, but there are different effects. Electromagnetism interacts with itself and it interacts with material substances. Different material substances have a different interaction with it. But material substances are still just electromagnetism. Atoms, neutrons, protons are still pure fluid electromagnetism spinning around. Little vortices, little dynamos spinning around all by themselves. They're independent. They're now self-sustaining. So they become like a particle. Well, they become a particle, but that particle is still made of pure fluid electromagnetism spinning around itself. But now it's a different effect. So you've got material substances interacting with pure fluid electromagnetism, and they're also interacting with ether. Electromagnetism and material substances interact with ether, which is unmanifest. That is spirit, consciousness. There is an interaction there as well. That's what life is. Me, as a living being, I am ether, spirit, interacting with electromagnetism and material substances, the body. That's what life is. This is a holistic science. So we've got light as one aspect of electromagnetism, and we've got electricity coming through the plugs. Are these two different things? Well, they appear to be different because electricity travels through metal wires. We can't put light through metal wires, but we can put light through fiber optics. Light will travel through fiber optics. So they appear to be different. They're not different, they're the same. It's a different medium and a slightly different effect. Remember, electromagnetism is built on two things: electricity and magnetism. And electricity really means dielectricity, static electricity. Static electricity combined with magnetism creates this field, electromagnetism. And they come together. You can't have one without the other. So when electromagnetism interacts with the wire, you're going to get electricity. But when electromagnetism in the form of light transfers through the air, it's a different form of electromagnetism. But it's still the same thing. It's a different medium, a different frequency, and a different balance between electrostatics and magnetism. So you've got a magnet here. Is that something different again? No, this is still electromagnetism. You've got both dielectricity, static electricity, and magnetism in here to create this. But static electricity is you don't really notice it. The magnetic aspect is dominant. When you've got a battery, what's a battery? You've got a plus and a minus in a battery. Now that is static electricity. Where static electricity is dominant, you've got this voltage, this potential. It's still electromagnetism. You will still have a magnetic field around a battery, but the static element is dominant. So when you have static electricity, a battery, and you put a wire across it, what's happening there? The static electricity is dominant. It still wants to return back to inertia. You've created a potential of energy, and that potential of energy wants to go back to inertia, disappear again. So the static electricity comes out of the ether, creates a potential, a battery, but that battery, that potential, wants to return back to ether, to inertia, disappear. So it's there, it's locked in this static position, a battery. If you put a wire across it, it allows it to discharge. See, a battery is not so much plus and minus, it's charge and discharge. Charge is the inertia dividing, separating, creating a potential. Discharge is energy returning back to inertia, disappearing again. So one side of the magnet is a plus, one is a minus. One side is more about the energy coming out. One side is more about the energy going in. That's how it works. It's not so much a plus and a minus. There's not two different charges. There's only charge and discharge. You see, modern science has made this too complicated. Plus and minus imply two different things. It's not two different things, only one thing. Everything is only one thing, electromagnetism. Everything manifest is only electromagnetism, and I explain it on this channel in detail. So you can see electricity is one aspect of it. Now light is another aspect. Now light is interesting. Light is a particular frequency of electromagnetism. Now that is created. Light is always created. Light comes from a point. It emerges from the atoms, or it emerges even from the ether. Now, how does that work? How does that work? Well, look at this light bulb here. Well, let's take a normal light, incandescent bulb. You take a battery and you put a wire across it. What happens? That wire, electricity passes through the wire. In other words, the charge wants to discharge, and it's trying to discharge, but it has to discharge through a medium. In other words, there's a field interaction. The battery is interacting with the wire in such a way that the energy, the potential, wants to disappear again. And in the process of disappearing, it has to pass through the wire. There's a field interaction with the atoms in the wire, and that creates a disturbance, another thing. A disturbance happening, and that creates, again, light. It creates electromagnetic frequencies coming off it. It's literally created from the atoms in the wire. The discharge going through the wire is stimulating the atoms, in such a way that the energy is passing through the atoms and triggering them to release light. So that would be the old incandescent light bulb. It's a wire between a battery. Light comes out, but it's a heater. I've got an electric heater down here. It's not done much, it's freezing today, but that's the same thing. When it passes through a wire, heat comes out, and you'll see the old heaters, they glow. It's still light. Infrared radiation is heat, but that's still light. It's still light. Even in a battery, there's a thing called the cold cathode effect. You'll see the plus and the minus. One can be hotter, one's a bit colder. One is still emitting light, heat, and one is still absorbing light. It's going colder. It's always the same thing, always the same thing. So light is really the creation of electromagnetism. It's being created from a point. It's coming out of an atom. You see, the atom is being stimulated. In other words, energy is going into the atom. It's being absorbed, disappearing into the atom. But when it disappears into the atom, it's triggering the atom to stimulate another release of energy. So one frequency goes into the atom, but another frequency comes out of the atom. It's been destroyed, but immediately created again. This is what's happening. This is what we call transformation of energy. It's not really transformation of energy. It's one system stimulating the creation of energy in another system. So that's what you would call conservation of energy. But it's still creation and destruction. It's slightly different. You've got to understand this, because you can have spontaneous creation of energy. Like this. The empty space here, nothing is there. But me as a living being, focus, I can start to create some energy here. It's going to be tiny little electromagnetic fluctuation. But spirit, consciousness, can directly affect, can directly disturb the ether such a way to create a tiny electromagnetic disturbance. That's literally how life works. The spirit is creating tiny electromagnetic disturbances in the brain. They're only tiny. We can only do tiny. That's why we don't have the force. But we do have the force. It's just tiny. Tiny electromagnetic disturbances are created by spirit in the brain, and the brain acts as a relay system to bounce them up, transform them into bigger ones so that we can move the body. But the body is still moved directly by spirit. Energy is created by spirit in the body, and the body is a relay system that powers the energy up in such a way that I can do real things. So you still have spontaneous creation of light from ether. But what we're talking about here, this light here, for example, electricity is going in. It's going into the atoms. These are LEDs. It's going into the semiconductor atoms. It's going into them in such a way that it triggers them to release another frequency, which is light that we see. So light is always created. It comes from a point. It comes out of an atom. When atom is a point, in the middle of an atom is still a point of inertia, infinitesimally small point. Again, you've got to listen to my series, a whole series, to understand this more. But electricity, now what we've got, and light, you see, is a balance. Light is the balance between electricity and magnetism. It's the natural balance that appears. Electricity, travelling through wires, we're focusing on one aspect more, the dielectric aspect. Magnetism, we're focusing on one aspect more, the magnetic aspect. But there's still always both. You're still going to have always a bit of both. So when you've got a battery, again, what you've got is a potential energy stretched across a wire in such a way that potential is created. It wants to disappear, it goes through the wire, and it has another effect. It affects the atoms in the wire. And depending on the wire, the conductivity of the wire, it allows this discharge to happen easier or harder. If it's a harder discharge, it stimulates the atoms more. The atoms are stimulated more. In other words, it has to pass through the medium of the wire, or the field, the potential across the wire, is stimulating the whole wire in such a way that it's vibrating the atoms and stimulating them to release energy. Energy is going into the atoms, coming out of the atoms as light. It will be heat and it will be light. Same thing. Now, if you can have a superconductor simply means the energy can pass through the wire with very little effect, or zero effect, zero resistance. That's what they call resistance. Resistance simply means a field interaction. It's friction. Again, I've done a lecture on this, kinetics and friction. This is how electromagnetism still builds up to kinetics, moving objects, things smashing together. Newton's laws of motion is still electromagnetics, field interactions. So again, electricity passing through a wire is a field interaction. It's friction. Friction means resistance. Resistance is friction, field interactions. The fields are working together, fighting against each other. There's an interaction. That's what a dynamo is. You take a coil of wire and a magnet, you pump the magnet through the coil of wire, you're creating a field interaction, friction, and that creates an electric current. So now, superconductivity means that the electricity, the potential, can immediately jump across. There's nothing stopping it. So you've got a potential of energy in a battery that's created. Once you've got that set up, it wants to discharge. If you can put a wire across with zero resistance, poof, it will just discharge like that, instantaneously vanish. And you won't have any effect. No effect will happen, because the charge will just discharge, done, finished. Now, if you had a wire, you've got an effect. And again, if you can build up a large potential, what you get is you get a spark will jump across. If there's a big enough potential, the spark will jump across. So you can see a magnet, a battery, if you could bring the anode and the cathode closer and closer together, once they get close enough together, you get a spark will jump across. Because the field interaction is getting more powerful. There's a field on the anode, a field on the cathode. As you bring them closer, it's a field interaction. They're getting closer, more powerful. When you get close enough, it becomes powerful enough such that it will jump through the air. The air will allow electricity to pass through. In other words, the air gets ionized, a little plasma. It actually turns into a plasma. A lightning bolt will jump across, a spark. And that is what the Ark of the Covenant is a battery with a spark jumping across it. This, you call it an electrical arc. That's why it's called an arc. It's an arc jumping across. And the Ark of the Covenant would have had a continuous arc. It's a box like this. It's literally a battery. It's a box with two things on it, an anode and a cathode, plus and a minus. And there'd be a spark jumping across. It would literally be a continuous bolt of lightning between these two things. That would be the Ark of the Covenant. And Tesla's done several things in his time. He built various generators, very incredible generators, because he knew ether physics, electrostatics and magnetism. And he built one of his last generators using the earth. He built a power generator with a lightning bolt. He had a standing lightning bolt, continuous. That was one of his last projects. Again, you've got to do some research to find this, because this stuff is not promoted or talked about in mainstream physics. But this is real deal. This was done. People have witnessed it. There's accounts of this, stories of this. So you've got to research this. But the Ark of the Covenant would have been that, a battery with an arc, a continuous bolt of lightning going across. And I'm going to explain to you today how that will work. But before I can get there, I've got to explain to you what superconductivity is. You've got a particular interaction between dielectricity and magnetism, and you can have different variations of these two things in different mediums. So when it's passing through metal, it's very similar to a magnet. You can imagine a magnet like this, North Pole, South Pole. That's like a plus and a minus, same thing. But if I could stretch this magnet out into a long, thin wire, the North Pole's here, South Pole here, this is now like electricity passing through a wire. You've got a plus and a minus. Very similar. And again, in a battery, the same thing. Once you put a wire, there will be a magnetic field. There will be a field between the two. It's not so much even something moving through the wire. It's a field created between the plus and the minus, the North and the South Pole. There's a field. The field interaction is what creates this discharge. So it's all the same thing. Light, however, is not moving between 2 points. Light is moving between itself. It's simply a disturbance of the ether propagating outwards in a sphere. It's going out. A vibration, a disturbance going out. Here in a wire, the disturbance is between 2 points. Between a charge and a discharge. There's a disturbance between the two. So it's localized, and then you can localize it through a wire. But remember, there's a magnetic field created around the wire. It's a big problem. You can see it in the power stations. 2 power wires, when you have the current one way or the other way, the wires will pull together or they'll push apart. Magnetism is created. A big problem in power stations, if you study Eric Dollard, again, he's another top expert in ether physics, but he's difficult. He's an engineer, very hard to understand him. But he talks about this. And in the power stations, they've got energy disappears. They don't know where it goes because energy just disappears back to the ether. Like lightning, it just disappears somewhere. Where does it go? It goes back to the ether. Counter space, he calls it counter space. So it's all the same thing. It depends how you use it, the medium you use, and the way you balance the electrostatics or the magnetics. That's what technology is, playing with these two things. But it's always one or the other of these two things, and there's always going to be elements of both. One could be dominant, and the other one could be dominant, but they're always going to be both. So now that leads me to, again, superconductivity. So if you understand friction, you can understand now what a current is. A current is the friction. It's the field interaction between the potential gap, the potential energy of the plus and the minus, and the atoms in the wire. So there's a certain amount of interaction between that. So that stimulates the atoms. And when you stimulate the atoms, it's slowing down, it's reducing the flow. There's a resistance to it. It's the same as light. When light travels through a medium, it slows down. It's interacting with the atoms. It's the same thing. When this potential interacts with a medium, there will be a change of speed of this vibration. There's a lag created by the atoms vibrating. Now, they've already got superconducting materials, but they have to have them very cold. Superconductor materials have got to be very, very cold, near absolute zero. That means the vibrations of the atoms are slowed down. So the atoms are nearly stationary. It's like you've taken away all the energy of the atoms and they're still. And now you can imagine in terms of friction, if you've got something moving and you're trying to move something across it, it's going to interact. If the thing is still, now we've got less friction, it can slip across. If you think about in terms of friction, you can understand it more. So really, a superconductor is like a super smooth substance. It's so smooth, the field, there's no disturbance of the field. There's no field interactions. Now, the only way that can happen is if you have a substance that the magnetic field is dominant and it's complete. You've got a perfectly smooth magnetic field. So when all the atoms get together, it's like they have a perfectly smooth magnetic field enclosing them. Now that means when you apply a voltage across them, you try and put some energy through them, what happens is the energy is not getting affected by them, it just sort of slips around them. It allows a pathway for the field to just slip around. So you are reducing the amount of field interactions. That's what superconductivity is. Now we can look at this in the fundamental particles of the universe. And again, I talk about this, you've got to listen to the whole series. But you've only got two fundamental particles, a neutron and a proton. A neutron is the fundamental particle, that's the first one. A neutron is created from the ether directly. High frequency disturbance of the ether creates energy, light. Super high frequency disturbance of the ether creates light that's coming out so fast it loops back to create a circle, a sphere. There you have a little particle. That's a neutron. It's still pure fluid electromagnetism, but it's now caught, it's chasing its own tail, it's stuck. And that goes off as an individual particle. Neutron will decay into a proton. A neutron, what you've got, first of all, let me explain it. It's neutral because the magnetic aspect is dominant. It's a perfect sphere. The magnetic field has sealed over. So the dielectric component, the electrostatic component, is hidden. It's hidden inside it. So it's neutral, there's no charge. And the magnetic field is sealed over. Now that is a superconductor. That's a superconductor. So a neutron will be a superconductor. But you don't have free neutrons. There's no free neutrons. You'll get neutrons in a plasma. Plasma, everything disappears back to the atomic state. Then a neutron, they don't survive. All free-floating neutrons decay into protons. It doesn't take them long because a neutron is high balanced. It's very balanced. Very easy to get knocked out of balance. So when it gets knocked out of balance, it becomes more toroidal. Now what you've got is a proton. In a proton, the dielectric component, the polarity becomes dominant. So the magnetic field goes to the sides and you have a polarity through the middle. In other words, the dielectric component, the plus and the minus, is exposed. The charge and the discharge is exposed, becomes visible, and the magnetic field has gone to the background. It's still held in a sphere, but it's now more toroidal and you've got field coming out, like a little magnet. So a proton is like a little magnet. It's got a field coming out. Because of that field is coming out, you now got field interactions, more field interactions. Now if something moves past a proton, it's got a field coming out, it's going to be attracted. A neutron is sealed over. So anything going past a neutron, nothing much is going to happen. It's just an enclosed field, it'll just go past. Now you've still got gravity. Again, I talked about gravity, but on a neutron level, gravity is so slight. And gravity is simply depolarized magnetism. Again, you've got to listen to my series. It's still just magnetism, electromagnetism, everything is. It just requires me to explain it to you. So now you can look at this in the universe. So if you take the idea of a proton, that's the fundamental particle with the dielectric exposed, you expand that up into the universe. The biggest version of a proton, the largest version of a proton, the proton is the smallest aspect in the universe of where the dielectric component is dominant. The largest aspect of a proton is a black hole. A black hole. A black hole is where the dielectric component, the plus and the minus, is so dominant, it's become so dominant that the magnetic field is completely overpowered the magnetic field. The magnetic field has shrunk down and the dielectric component, the plus and the minus, has come out, so much so that the magnetic field has disappeared and there's no mass. It's got no mass. You see, remember, a proton and a neutron has got a magnetic field. That creates the illusion of mass. Mass is created by the magnetic field. In a black hole, the dielectric component has so far overpowered the magnetic field it's disappeared. It's a tiny point now. And we know that the black hole has got no mass. It's all shrunk down to a point. It's gone down to infinite mass, but you can't see it. It's not there. It's in a point because the dielectric component has overtaken it. And it's so powerful, the dielectric component, that what comes out is neutrons. Neutrons are coming out. In a magnet, it's not so powerful, just magnetism is coming out, north and a south pole. In a black hole, and it's got matter, you still see there's a lump of matter here. A black hole, the matter has shrunk right down to a point, and all we get is powerful, so powerful, the most powerful, and that is neutrons. That's the most powerful. Now, so that's one aspect. The dielectric component is dominant. And you still have a galaxy forming around the middle, so it still proves it's magnetic. Because we'll have a plane of inertia, it's called an accretion disk. So it's still exactly the same map as this. Now, a superconductor is the opposite. If you take the neutron, so that the most powerful aspect of a proton is a black hole, the most powerful aspect of a neutron, now, okay, let me explain this. If you take the neutron to its largest state or its most powerful state, the idea of a dominant magnetic field, the most powerful version of a neutron or the pattern of a neutron is a superconductor. So if you can create a large neutron, in other words, a perfect spherical magnetic field, large one, it has got to be so powerful, this magnetic field, and it's perfectly spherical, perfectly balanced. and it's looped back on itself, it's not open in any way, now what you've got is a superconductor. Because that is like a self-contained unit. The field is not extending, it's sort of sealed in itself. So now anything comes to it, it just slips around it. It'll just slip around it. It's like a perfectly smooth object. If you had a superconductor, like a ball, so imagine this was a superconductor, and I just threw it through the air, it would have no friction. It will just pass through the air. It won't be affected by friction. It won't even be affected by gravity. If this crystal here was a superconductor, in other words, this was a perfect spherical magnetic field, the dielectric component is totally hidden like a giant neutron. But again, to make a giant neutron, that magnetic field has got to be so powerful. You see, a neutron is tiny, but the magnetic field relative to the size of the neutron is extremely powerful. A neutron has got a very, very powerful magnetic field. It's a little superconductor. But because it's so tiny, it's still not very powerful. If this was a direct proportion of a neutron, if I could take a neutron, blow it up to this size, this ball would be a superconductor. And it would be a superconductor for everything. I'd throw it through the air, would just carry on. It wouldn't be affected by gravity. The air molecules wouldn't affect it. It wouldn't be affected by friction. It's hard to comprehend it, but that would be the extension. If you take a neutron and extend it to its limit, its largest possible size, you've got a superconductor. If you take a proton, extend it to its largest possible size, you've got a black hole. Now, we can play with this in technology. That's what we're doing. If we can play with the dielectric component, we could create a little black hole. We've done it. We've literally created a little black hole in a magnet. It's very weak. We've got to create a more powerful one that we can control, one that neutrons might come out. Again, alien technology. That's free energy machines, but with a very difficult one, powerful one. And if we can create a neutron, a superconductor, now we've got something very interesting. Now, a superconductor, so again, we can do it on an atomic scale. A neutron is a subatomic scale, a superconductor. But like I said, you can't have neutrons just hanging around. You've got to have a substance. So they're trying to create different substances. In other words, you've got to create a material. When the atoms form, they become perfectly neutral, perfectly spherical, and they create a self-enclosed bubble of a magnetic field, and then it's extremely powerful self-enclosed bubble of a magnetic field. If you can create a substance like that, it's literally like a substance made out of large neutrons, now you'd have a superconductor substance. And again, there is one, I've got to talk about it. Now, again, we're trying to find it. We haven't got an actual real, room temperature superconductor. Like I said, they can create it by cooling down the atoms. So there's still work to be done to create an actual room temperature superconductor. But now there is. And this is where we go to the Ark of the Covenant. So the Ark of the Covenant is all to do with gold, the element gold. Now, gold is a very interesting element, a very important element in the universe. It's a universal element. It's so important, gold is going to be important everywhere in the universe. Aliens will like gold. We humans like gold. Everyone likes gold. Why? Why? Gold is the best conductor of electricity. If you get a pure gold wire, you've got it in hi-fis. If you've got a high quality hi-fi, music system, they will have gold wire. Gold is the best conductor of electricity, so it's got the least resistance, more electricity can pass through without the wire getting too hot, without the wire melting. And that means more electricity can pass through, finer details of information as well can pass through. So gold is the best conductor of electricity. You also see it on the old world buildings. They knew all about this. On the top of the building, you'd have a weather vane, and it will be copper and gold. Sometimes solid gold, sometimes gold-plated copper, right at the top of the building, because it's to collect the electrostatic energy and transform it down into the building. You need a good conductor at the top. Okay, that's why they did it. Nothing to do with lightning conductors. Well, they were collecting the lightning, but it's going into the building. They're transforming it into useful static electricity into the building. That's, again, ancient technology. All ether. I talk about it on this channel as well, and I'll do more. So gold is the best conductor. So we value it highly because of that, but we wear it because it does not tarnish. It will stay the same. Once you've got gold, it's nearly like a crystal. You can get crystalline gold, but crystal is the most stable form of matter. It won't change anymore. These crystals won't decay. They won't corrode. Nothing will happen to them. If I leave them in a safe place, millions of years later, they'll be identical. The same with gold. It won't corrode. Nothing will happen to it. It's reached its most stable state. It's the base. It's reached its bottom level of entropy. It's there now. That's it. Untarnished forevermore. And you wear it because also it will also conduct the ether. You feel good when you wear gold. It brings electromagnetism to your body. Electrostatics around you is absorbed by the gold and helps it to go through your body. You wear bracelets, rings, necklaces, headbands. All this is to help circuits of energy around your body. You can have belts, all of this stuff. You wear it on your heart, a belt, a thing. It's all to collect the energy. So gold is valuable everywhere. With technology and with human technology. But you've also got another formulation of gold, monatomic gold. It's a different formulation of gold. So where you've got free-floating gold atoms, or tiny lumps of gold, nanoparticles, it's very interesting. Powdered gold. It's a white powder. They also call it almost gold. You can look into this, you can get supplements, and a lot of stories about this. Of course, the stories about the aliens coming down. They were looking for the gold, and they would enslave us all to dig the gold out for them. But they valued the gold, and they valued this almost gold, the powder, white powder gold, because you take it as a supplement. You take the powdered gold because that will improve the conductivity of your body. It will help the energy flow inside your body. So that's what they said, it give them power. And they also say, well, it gives them power to resist radiation. Why is that? If you take the almost gold, increases your conductivity, but you also got to be a master. It will improve the conductivity of your body. And then you can improve the coherence of your own magnetic field. You can create a bubble around yourself, an aura. That aura is like a neutron, a magnetic field around you. You yourself become a bit like a superconductor. Energy slips off you. Radiation coming to you is bounced off or slipped away. So that's what they say, taking this almost gold powder, because when you go into space, you've got radiation, it will protect you from radiation. So it's true, you can take this supplement and it will help you resist all these ambient radiation, microwaves. But be careful, don't overdose on that supplement. You've got to be careful with it. I'll talk about it in another video. If you check out my playlist, I talk about diet, I talk about supplements, look through my talks, you'll see them all there. So almost gold is a white powder, monatomic gold, and it's got superconductor properties. Solid gold is a brilliant conductor. Powdered gold is a superconductor. And the stories about this, you've got to have a lot of it. So you have a big box of this almost gold. They say it's like it levitates. It's lightweight. It seems to float. And people have seen this, different things, different effects, putting this gold in places. You see little sort of things happening, like it's, moving, floating. So it's got a fascinating superconducting effect, almost gold, monatomic gold. And it's because that gold atom, when it's left alone, is going to be a perfect sphere. It's going to create this, like a neutron, a smooth magnetic field around it. And because of that, again, it's going to have a superconductive effect. Now, let's lead me to the Ark of the Covenant. Because if you can understand this, you'll understand a lot about ether and electromagnetism. What the Ark of the Covenant was, okay, it was a box. There's documents of this. It's in the Bible, it's everywhere. People have tried to recreate this. There's measurements of it, detailed instructions how to build it. And it fits in a space. There's a Great Pyramid of Giza. There's a space there where it will fit, exactly the right proportions. The Ark of the Covenant goes in the pyramid. And lots of people talk about it. You can research all this. But it's a box. It's a solid gold box. First of all, thick, solid gold. The outside is solid gold. It has to be solid gold. That's why we can't recreate it now. You're not going to get the gold to do it. It must be solid gold. And then on the top, you've got, like I said, like a battery, 2 poles. They're like sculptures, but essentially it's one here, one here. So that means it's a battery. There's going to be a spark between the two. But it's solid gold on the outside. Now what's on the inside? Inside is insulated. First of all, it's insulated. So there must be a good insulation inside. You've got to create a separation from the outside and the inside. Remember, it's going to be a battery. A battery is a capacitor. There must be separation between the layers. So you've got inside is an insulator. Then inside the insulator, you filled up the box with what? Almost gold, monatomic gold, the white powder. So inside the box is the superconductor white powder gold. Outside the box is the solid gold. So now you've got 2 different things, 2 different types of gold. On the outside, one of these anodes, the anode or the cathode, I'm not sure which is which now, one of them will connect to the outside gold. So one of these things will come to the outside of the box. The other one will have to be insulated, so it does not connect to the outside, be insulated, and it's going to go through, and it will connect to the white powder gold on the inside. So now what you've got is a potential energy difference. You've got a potential energy between the external solid gold box and the internal white powder superconductor monatomic gold, almost gold. So now you've got 2 things going on. Now you've got a potential energy between the superconductor and the conductor. So now what happens? Okay, if you take this box out in the sunlight, say for example, even in the sunlight, anywhere, there's so much gold there, light hitting this gold, it's going to charge up the gold to some degree. So once this gold gets charged up, it wants to discharge somewhere. Where does it go? Discharge always wants to go to ground. In other words, ground means disappear back to inertia. The ground does not mean the earth. It could be anywhere. It means any point of low pressure where it can disappear back to the ether. Energy disappearing again. So this charged up exterior gold it's building up a potential, and it wants to disappear. Where does it go? Well, it's going to go to the inside, the white powder gold. Let me explain it a bit more. So, okay, the next thing is this Ark of the Covenant is going to fit inside the pyramid. So it goes inside the Great Pyramid of Giza. Now, the Great Pyramid of Giza is in itself an electrostatic generator. Electrostatic generator. Underneath will be water running. Then you've got granite, and there's filters of things going up where it increases the electrostatics going up to the point at the top of the pyramid. You go into all the details of this. I don't want to go into the details. Essentially, it's a massive electrostatic energy generator. And if you focus all that electrostatics built up from the pyramid into the area where this box is, so all the electrostatics is going to go to this gold box, the exterior solid gold box. It's going to charge up the gold. The gold is a conductor, it builds it up. All that static charge builds up. Where's he going to go? He wants to go to Earth. But there's no Earth anywhere around. It's held in suspension at the top of this pyramid. And this pyramid is all charged up. The whole pyramid is charged up. It can't go to ground. So this electrostatics is building up in the gold box. Building up. So because the external potential is going to build up so much, the static electricity building up on the solid gold, it wants to release. Where's it going to release to? The lowest potential is going to be inside the box. That's all there is, because the whole pyramid is charged up. It can't go to the pyramid anywhere. The whole thing is providing the charge to the box. The only place that charge will discharge is inside the box. Now the trouble is, inside the box must be a superconductor, because if it's not a superconductor, something else, the spark will jump across to that thing, it will heat up, probably blow up, it will probably just explode. Because it wants to release, but if it releases into a substance that can't handle it, it'll just build up, explode, the whole thing will blow up. And they do say that in the pyramid, it looks like there's been an explosion. Something did blow up, so something went wrong. Or someone maybe put the wrong material in it, someone fiddled with it and caused an explosion. But if the middle of the box was this pure superconductor, what happens is, because the charge wants to release, it's building up so much and it wants to release. There's nowhere else for it to go. Inside the box is insulated, so there's a potential difference. There's an energy difference. It has to go inside the box, but the box is a superconductor. So as it goes inside the box, it just slips through everything. What happens? It has to create a point of inertia. It literally will create a point of inertia in the middle of the box. And it will just disappear down that point of inertia. And it won't get stuck in the medium. In other words, the gold, the almost gold, the superconductor just lets it slip through into a point of nothing. So it'll just disappear. So what you've got is continuous static electricity build up on the outside. And then it builds up so much in the box that it jumps across to the inside. But the inside of the box, there's nothing there. It has to go away to nothing. And that's why it will safely discharge. Look at it as lightning. Lightning. So lightning builds up in the clouds. It comes from one point. It explodes from one point, but it will go to another point. Where's it going? It will go off here. It will go off here. It doesn't go to ground. It goes off to a different point. And it just disappears. Where's the point it's disappeared to? It's disappeared to a point of low pressure, a point of inertia. Anywhere where there's a lower electrical pressure, it will go there. So that you're literally creating lightning. You're creating a continuous lightning storm. So what will happen is the pyramid is creating massive, continuous electrostatic charge. That massive, continuous electrostatic charge is being focused onto the exterior gold box. So it's continually built up, and then it's being released. It's jumping across the ARK to the middle into the point of inertia, just disappearing back to ether. It's collecting energy from the ether, focusing the energy from the ether, so much so that you create lightning, and then the lightning jumps across and goes back to the ether in the middle. So what you will have is a continuous bolt of lightning going across the Ark of the Covenant. That's what you'll have. Continuous plasma. It'll just be continuous. And then once you've got that in the pyramid, now you've got a focal area of plasma, high energy, localized there. You can use that to create resonance, power up other things. So through resonance, you create other electrical things. So it's not wires, it'll be wireless power. And again, it's mysterious power. We don't understand it. It's done through geometry. They create all these different implements, metal, whatnot, crystals, various geometry that allow it to resonate with that electricity. And then you can have little localized things. You can even have light bulbs, things like that happening through resonance. You see, if you've got a Tesla coil, massive electrostatics, you bring a light bulb near it, it just lights up. No wires, it just lights up. The electrostatics is so powerful that it just wants to jump across. It would stimulate the atoms, create light. So that's how it works. That's how the Ark of the Covenant works. High ether, unmanifest energy, it moves to electrostatics. Electrostatics is collected by the pyramid, focused by the pyramid into the Ark of the Covenant. Exterior is gold, conductor of that electrostatics. Builds up so much, it wants to go somewhere. Where does it go? It goes to the middle of the box. The middle of the box is a superconductor. Therefore, no heat is generated. It's not getting hotter. Superconductor just allows it to slip through to nothing. It draws it in, but where does it go? Inside, it will create a point of inertia, a point of low pressure. You've created a little black hole in the middle of this box. But it's a black hole just sucking the energy in, disappearing. So it's a lightning machine. A lightning machine. That's all it is. And it'd be great to build one now. So if any multi-billionaires out there want to have a go building a solid box and getting all that almost gold and seeing if we can do it. And then, of course, you've got to put it in a place like a pyramid where the electrostatics will build up. You see, that's why we don't bother. It's massive engineering. Different type of engineering. Big things. Because you're trying to collect electrostatics. Large amount of electrostatics requires large buildings. We only got small things. There's only tiny electrostatics. Not enough. Not enough. So I hope this made sense. Superconductivity is a neutron. Then when you've got the opposite, so that's one level of the universe, you've got superconductor. That is where magnetism is dominant. The other end of the universe is a proton. That's where dielectricity is dominant. That goes to a black hole, energy bursting out. So that'd be a different type of free energy machine. A machine where you create a point of inertia, that energy just comes out all by itself. This Ark of the Covenant is a battery, is a free energy battery, but you're doing it the other way around. You're collecting ambient energy and focusing inwards to a point. The other free energy machine, like a black hole, will be a point, energy just comes out of it. Two different approaches. Neutron, superconductivity. Proton, a black hole. Energy bursting out, dielectricity. Magnetism, energy coming in, sealing over. Always electromagnetism. Everything is only electromagnetism, and electromagnetism is only a disturbance of the ether. So I hope this made sense. It's a tricky one. I'll probably talk about it again in time, but check out the whole series of my Aether Physics. I explain this from the beginning. So thank you so much for listening. Please do leave me any questions or comments, and I look forward to seeing you in any of these other videos here.